All right, hello and welcome everyone to this official community introduction to the newly reformed Rapid Response Team. I'm Sergeant Kevin Allen, Public Information Officer. We brought together leadership and subject matter experts all in one place so you can get a full picture of how our RT will work. We have a presentation to offer and then we'll have some time to answer questions. We know many members of our community have asked when our public order team will be up and running, and there has been a lot of anticipation for having this professional team. Our goal today is to show you the results of all the planning and the thoughtfulness that have gone into this effort. It's a complex topic, and our speakers today have a tremendous amount of knowledge and expertise. I'm grateful that all of you are here and willing to get into the weeds with us. Many of you have asked what's new and what's different about this team from the team before, and there's a lot, so you'll get those answers this morning. The timing of today's news conference is no coincidence. We're excited to announce that this week will be the first week of full team training for RRT. The new team members have completed their academy training for public order, and they are now joining their experienced colleagues for advanced and ongoing training. We expect that the team will be ready to deploy soon, should the need arise. A couple of things I want to call your attention to before we begin. First of all, RRT is much more than just a public order team. It has always been an all-hazards incident response team. It started in 2000 and was capable of quickly deploying members with specialized training to respond to incidents requiring higher levels of technical expertise. That includes public assemblies and civil disturbances, but it also includes natural and man-made disasters. The team was always on the cutting edge of emerging practices nationwide, and that has been the goal as we brought together this new team. Another note, this is not a full-time team. Almost all of the 50 members that are on the team have other roles within the Bureau and will be activated when needed. Finally, I want to call your attention to one other important thing. Many of our speakers today will be referencing a report written by a company called Independent Monitor LLC, or IMLLC. It's really important to know what this is. That report has been the roadmap that we have been following throughout this process. The report was a critical look at the city's handling of protests and riots in 2020. IMLLC did months of exhaustive research, investigation, and interviews of stakeholders, and last summer presented their findings, analysis, and recommendations. PPB has leaned into those recommendations, reflecting on what could have been done better and what we need to do going forward. There were 12 recommendations made in the IMLLC report, one of which was that the city must create a new specialized public order team and transparently introduce that team to the public. That's what we're doing here today. And I'll let you know that we will be posting links to the IMLLC report, the city's response, along with a tremendous amount of additional information right on the front page of our website, portlandpolice.com. We invite you to use it as a reference now and going forward, and we anticipate adding a lot more information as we go. We'll also include a video of today's presentation so members of the community can access it at any time. And with that, I will now step aside and introduce our speakers. First up is our Police Commissioner, Mayor Ted Wheeler.
Thank you, Sergeant, for that great summary. Good morning, everybody. As the Sergeant indicated, we're here today to talk about the work of the Portland Police Bureau and specifically the work that they've been doing to redevelop its public order team to support safe and constitutional free speech in the city of Portland. As many of you know, the Portland Police Bureau manages multiple public order events each week, and it's working hard to support peaceful expression of free speech while also holding criminal behavior accountable. Freedom of expression is embodied in the core of our city's character, and we all value the sanctity of those rights. But these rights are not without limits. They are not a free pass to cause destruction. The city has an obligation to preserve public safety and support accountability when criminal behavior occurs. And when the need arises, we call on our police officers to intervene. Our expectations are high. We expect officers to embody their training and engage with the community with integrity as well as with resolve. Likewise, we expect our community to demonstrate passionately but peacefully without causing harm to one another. And when these expectations are not met, I believe our entire city suffers for it. Last year, City Council accepted a report from Independent Monitor LLC that's part of our settlement agreement with the United States Department of Justice. This report examined the city's response to the 2020 protests and riots, and it made specific recommendations as to how the city should work with the community and with the Police Bureau to support public order events transparently, safely, and constitutionally. A principal recommendation of that report was to reestablish a team of officers who specialize in this specific and important work. Since then, the Bureau has been working diligently to implement all of these recommendations, including recruiting and screening volunteers for the new rapid response team, developing training for the new team, and purchasing vital equipment. Today, we want to share the status of these efforts and ensure that the community has insight into what they can expect from this important team. I appreciate the thoughtfulness and the tremendous effort that has gone into this important undertaking. I'm committed to doing all I can to support our Police Bureau and the officers who step forward to do what is ultimately very challenging work. And now I'll hand it over to Commander Franz Schoening.
All right, thank you, Mayor. And like the Mayor said, I'm going to introduce some of the team leadership to talk about RRT. Brief introduction. PPB Commander Craig Dobson, C-R-A-I-G-D-O-B-S-O-N. He is from Central Precinct and has been a leader in our crowd management incident command system for years and is considered a national subject matter expert in the field of management of public order events. RRT is housed inside the Specialized Resources Division here at PPB. The commander of SRD is Franz Schoening, F-R-A-N-Z-S-C-H-O-E-N-I-N-G. Commander Schoening has been heavily involved in the development of the new team. He also has 15 years of experience with RRT here in Portland, and he is an international speaker and trainer in public order policing. And we'll start with Commander Dobson.
I'd like to thank everyone, ladies and gentlemen. It's exciting to be here, to be able to publicly peel away the layers and share with you some of the behind-the-scenes things. And so part of what I want to do today is frame kind of where we're at with public order and how it works. 95%, technically 95% of most events are peaceful. Throughout the city and throughout the nation, we see events happening here in Portland on a regular basis, and they're all peaceful. We sometimes see dozens of events that require no police intervention or even monitoring by the police. And those are the kind of events that we want. Our role in all of public order is to ensure that we protect democracy. And part of that, of protecting democracy, is ensuring that individuals have their rights upheld. And so in doing that, there's a process. And so as I try to frame this ahead of time, so as we talk about what that public order team does, what that all hazards team does, that you get kind of a broader look at the high level of what goes on behind the scenes that allows us to be able to have peaceful events. And so there's lots of processes, and it's complex. Public order is complex as an incident, and it's important to understand that there are processes involved in that. To start with, it doesn't happen just overnight. We have processes in place that allow us to plan for these events, and there's a whole planning cycle that goes on behind the scenes when we learn of an event. Through intelligence, we learn of an event, and then we begin to plan that and decide what resources need to be attached to that event. And from there, then we go through making objectives and following basically what the federal FEMA requires of us, which is the incident command system. Requires us to follow a process to plan for those events. In that, if we look at public order, there's a large amount of research and academic study that's been done behind it. The gold standard in operating and managing events is the negotiated management model. And then embedded within that are other theories involved. The elaborated social identity model is part of that. And the pillars that these are founded on are communication, education, facilitation, and thank you. Differentiation, sorry, got tongue-tied there for a second. And so we'll be talking about those pillars and talking about how we're embedding those pillars at all the levels. When we talk about it, I think it's best if I use an analogy of a symphony. When you go to a symphony, publicly, when you sit in the stands and you watch an event, you see the actual members of the symphony. There's 4 parts of that symphony typically. There's the woodwinds, there's the horns, there's the percussions, there's the string instruments, and they're all playing and directed by a conductor. Sometimes they play by themselves, oftentimes they're interseated and interwoven together, but there's pieces and parts to it. But even behind the scenes that the public never gets to see is another whole team that makes that symphony successful. And so part of my job is the behind the scenes of making what that symphony, how to be successful on the street. Typically when we look at these events, the most public version of it is our all hazards team or our public order team that'll be RRT, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But it's important to understand that the gold standard of this negotiated management model that we use has layers to it. And that first layer is what we consider stewardship, where we're monitoring and communicating with the groups that are out there to ensure that we can keep normalcy going on. When we start to see tension points or friction points, that's when we will then try to do intervention techniques, where we'll try to intercede and try to remove those tension places by having bike officers and other individuals involved that's that second layer that we use. And if it continues to grow and fester into disorder, then we involve what would be our public order team. And so what I'd like to do now is turn over some time to Franz, Commander Schoening, to talk about those different layers of what we would consider part of the symphony. Franz.
Good morning. So again, my name is Franz Schoening. I'm the commander of our Specialized Resources Division, and I appreciate Commander Dobson kind of taking a step back and looking at the broader efforts we make to manage these events, because the Specialized Resources Division houses a number of programs. And when he talks about the different phases of managing these events, everything from stewardship to intervention to crowd control, we play a part in all of that. So, at the stewardship level, as part of SRD, we've got a program called the Event Liaison Officer program, and it's housed under our crisis negotiation team. And what it is officers whose main purpose and goal is to facilitate peaceful events, to engage in conversations and dialogue with event organizers or leaders who are willing to engage with us. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not, but we're always going to be out there making the effort to engage in that conversation, that dialogue, to de-escalate those tension points or friction points that arise. If there's criminal conduct happening out there, it's a low-level type of criminal conduct, or if they want to, say, march across a bridge or down a street and there's not enough room to do it lawfully on a sidewalk, we may engage in a conversation about how we can allow them to accomplish their event, facilitate their free speech and assembly, but do it in a way that minimally impacts the public safety and order and flow of downtown. So our dialogue or event liaison officers wear a different uniform when they're out there. This white shirt here on the table, you can see, is different from your typical police uniform, and it's got different labeling on the back. It clearly says liaison officer. So I would expect to see, as these events happen in the public areas downtown or wherever they are in the city, if you see officers dressed like this out there engaging folks on the street, again, their role is to facilitate those events, engage in the dialogue. Their role is not to do enforcement. As I want to be very clear about that. As we build this program and continue to develop it, we need to build that trust and relationship with community event organizers that these folks are not out there to do enforcement, to police the event. They're there to facilitate communication between our incident commander, who's again balancing those interests, and the event organizers themselves. It was a program that was developed in 2018. It's been a growing process, a learning process. We had some successes in 2020. You may have seen folks in these shirts out there trying to engage event organizers. We learned some lessons in 2020 about what went well, what didn't go well. This year we had a conference here in Portland, the Western States Public Order Conference. We brought in international experts to talk about this program and how they implement it in different parts of the country and the world. We then sent some officers out to Columbus, Ohio. They're engaged in a partnership with Ohio State University on building this type of program out there. We went out there and looked at their program, took some lessons from that, and we're kind of reinvigorating this program here in Portland. We've recently posted for position announcements. We're recruiting officers to train them to do this work again. So that's kind of the first phase that you'll see out there. As we kind of shift to the intervention level, where there's, again, those small incidents of criminal activity happening, the friction points, you're probably going to see officers out there engaging with the crowd and potentially intervening, either making arrests or just trying to message and de-escalate. And frequently, you're going to see people on bicycles doing that work. So you'll see clearly here, there's a yellow shirt. Most of our bike officers are going to be wearing a yellow shirt. They'll also have a bike helmet. That's just typical of the equipment you'll see out there, so they can safely engage on bicycles. And then as we shift to the broader, if there's criminal activity happening unabated, or we have the inability to manage those incidents with just the resources through de-escalation, conversation, negotiation, and limited interventions, we may shift to crowd control. And that's when you'll see a lot of our public order folks out there. They'll be wearing different uniforms, potentially the black uniforms, the rapid response team uniform. And you may see they'll be wearing some body armor, padding, and also a different style of helmet. And you may end up seeing them with public order shields as well. And that's largely because when that level of criminal activity is happening, there's safety concerns, right? And so as an employer, we have to provide our employees with the protection required to let them do this job safely as they facilitate these events and intervene in criminal activity. So that's kind of the staggered approach. Again, going back to what Commander Dobson said on how we're going to manage these events. I'm going to turn it back over to Commander Dobson to talk about kind of the IMLC report, the recommendations, and how we've started to implement those. And then I'm going to come back in a little bit and talk specifically about the rapid response team, how we're rebuilding that, and the training involved.
So as has been mentioned, the IMLLC came up with 12 recommendations for us. They were in batches, and so from those, we basically were able to build a four-prong approach on how to address those through self-reflection and focus on those events. As well as the landscape also changed. In 2020 and 2021, the state legislature changed ORS, or the state statutes, which affected also public order, and they changed many things within there. And so just as a high direction here, I'll just cover in 181 Adam, 0.700 to 0.70710 are most of where those changes happened within the ORS that are regarding public order. They go everywhere from defining what a crowd is now to what uniforms are required to be worn and what it needs to be on those uniforms to be worn, as well as what and when you can use certain tools within public order, especially when you get to what is considered, what state statute at this point calls crowd management, which in the past we've called crowd control. And that covers everything from pepper spray to less lethal, or what the state statute requires is kinetic impact munitions, as well as tear gas or CS gas. And so with those, our four tiers or our four prongs that we attacked the changing and improving were, again, based on best practice or that gold standard of negotiated management model, as well as those four principles or pillars of communication, education, differentiation, and facilitation. We looked at our policy and made sure that we not only met state statute, but we also embedded within there and made sure that that gold standard was there of what is negotiated management, and made sure that we had those layers in there so that the public could see it as well as our membership. So that was our first prong, was to make sure that that was up and running. The second prong was then to build out management teams. Again, as I was talking about the symphony, and behind the scenes there's that group of people. One of the things that we learned, and the IMLLC group found, was that we needed a deeper bench within our management side of the house, so our incident commanders. And so starting in 2020, we then began to train every sergeant and above in incident command, so that we had them a basic understanding and gave them the required understanding and foundation of how incident command works. And then of our commanders, we brought in other experts from companies to teach them about the gold standard of crowd management and teach them how crowd theory works, so that they were able to take that on as well. So that was phase 2, or prong 2 of that, so that we could ensure that when we have an emergency within the city, that we've got all of the employees within the Bureau assigned to some task behind the scenes to be able to manage helping ensure that the folks that are out on the street can do it effectively and efficiently. Prong 3 of those recommendations the IMLCC had was, or IMLLC had, was to ensure that we had mutual aid plugged in. And so behind the scenes, we've been working to expand our ability to have mutual aid. And the idea behind that, and the folks that we've garnered to help us with that, is they will come and backfill for us and take calls for service to ensure that we can continue that calls for service for emergency needs, while we then can address any kind of civil disturbance that might be happening, or the resources that we might need to dedicate towards a public order event. And then the final piece of that is improving the systems and operational response. And so, as Franz talked about, or Commander Schoening talked about, it's improving and looking at how are we operating within the liaison program. How do we bolster that? We also found gaps and lapses in our bicycle program. So how do we improve that? And we've reintegrated that into our advanced academy to ensure that all officers that are hired are then bicycle trained, so that we can use them and facilitate them in this public order management piece, as well as our public order team. And as we bring that in, what does that look like, and what training do we need to give them to ensure that they really understand the behind how public behavior is, and how we should be operating within these things. And so I'll turn the time back over to Commander Schoening to talk about kind of where those areas are.
So, you know, in 2021, the rapid response team disbanded. And I would say before the IMLC report came out, before any of that stuff came out, there was a recognition that we needed people doing this work that had specialized training, that were prepared to do this work safely and in a way the community supported. We started internal conversations in 2021 into 2022 with former team members about what the challenges were, the barriers were to folks doing this work again. And then certainly when the IMLC report came out with the recommendation that the city needed to rebuild the public order team, we doubled down, we focused on what that looked like and how we're going to get there. Ongoing conversations between the Portland Police Association and City Council and our executive team finally resulted in, earlier this year, the council supporting a premium pay for folks who are willing to do this work again. We got that in place, and then in April we conducted an internal recruitment process for this team, for the rapid response team. We had over 80 members apply for the team, and we've selected 50. So I'm firmly in the belief that we've got the best folks possible that are ready to do this work again, and now we're preparing them to do it safely and in the way we expect. We ran an internal recruitment or selection process to select the folks for this team. That selection process included certain eligibility criteria, including, but not limited to, they had to be comfortable in large crowds. They had to possess excellent verbal and written communication skills. They had to have the ability to recognize, acknowledge, and adapt to the role and presence of trauma at play in an individual's life, including our members of partner agencies, and community members. We asked that they have mountain bike certification, the ability to communicate with a wide variety of people from various backgrounds, ethnicities, occupations, and viewpoints, the ability to identify and mitigate the influence of implicit bias on decisions and actions, the ability to remain respectful and professional when dealing with people in an emotionally charged state of mind, and most importantly, no disciplinary history that could be detrimental to the effective function of the team. We also required a supervisor and command staff recommendations, and we reviewed employee records, including their complaint history, their internal affairs history, and their civil liability history. After that selection process was done, again, we ended with 42 officers and 8 sergeants that we believe are the best folks, the best candidates to do this work again. We currently have 1 full-time lieutenant, 1 full-time sergeant, and 1 full-time officer whose responsibility is to conduct the training, to facilitate the preparation of the training, conduct the training, ensure the logistics support of the team, and also the proper tracking of standard operation procedures, and also munitions and all the tools and equipment that goes with it. We didn't have that prior to 2020, and so I think that was part of the issues that IMLC identified, where our systems failed in kind of tracking different records and munitions as part of that. So we've got 8 sergeants who were former RRT members who have returned to this work. 5 were promoted to sergeant after 2020, 2021 through the routine promotion process. We have 27 former rapid response team members who have come back who were part of the team in 2020, 2021. We have 4 former rapid response team members who were not part of the team in 2020, 2021, but have now come back to this work again. And then we have 11 members who are brand new to the team. About 20% of our members are women, and half of our supervisors are from diverse backgrounds. So after we went through the selection process, again, part of the IMLC recommendations were that we look at best practices or promising practices around the country on how we're going to build this team and train them to prepare them for this work. One of the best practices that IMLC recommended or identified was the National Tactical Officers Association's Public Order Response Standards. Those standards dictated that for advanced level teams, which is what we're supposed to have, they have 40 hours of initial training and 96 hours of training a year in ongoing training. When we reconstituted the team, we sent our new members down to the Oregon State Police Basic Public Order class. It's a 30-hour training hosted by the Oregon State Police. That training covered topics including crowd theory, state law, team formations and movements, the use of specialized equipment, specialized tactics, emergency medical skills, and scenario-based training. As the chief mentioned, or the mayor mentioned, we're going to be beginning our first team training this month, and that's part of the ongoing training. We're doing training this week, actually tomorrow, is the first training day for the team, and that monthly ongoing training is going to include topics including law, police bureau directives, de-escalation, the use of force, incorporation of body-worn cameras, practical skills iterations, bike training, scenario training, and more. We're currently working to identify how to deliver blocks on civil rights and community perspectives around these events. That's an ongoing conversation. We've met with different advocacy groups in the community to talk about what that training would look like, how we would bring people in to provide their perspective on how we manage these events. There's also going to be additional specialty training for members who will be tasked with using specialized, less lethal tools and crowd control munitions, and for other skill sets like the post-disaster response operations. That'll be above and beyond the 96 hours per year. So in terms of equipment and what you should expect, or what the public should expect to see from the team moving forward, rapid response team members are always going to deploy as authorized by the incident commander based on an objective evaluation of information about the event, the possibility of criminal activity happening during the event, or the threats that may be posed during the event, and the possibility of interpersonal violence occurring. They could deploy in plain clothes, in standard police uniforms, in bicycle uniforms, or in full protective equipment based on that evaluation and the direction from the incident commander. There are always going to be attempts through our event liaisons to facilitate the peaceful events and to encourage event leaders to address low-level issues internally without police intervention at all. If there are isolated incidents of criminal activity, you may see a proportionate response from the Bureau, including the rapid response team. That may include the use of our sound truck to make announcements or warnings. It may involve an arrest if there's an isolated incident of criminal activity happening, if the incident commander believes it's not going to escalate the event, or it may make a delayed arrest. It may be after the event's happened. If a criminal activity or assaultive behavior continues to spread, you may see rapid response team members in full protective equipment used to address that activity and restore order. We expect to see a significant decrease in our use of crowd control munitions moving forward, but if a civil disturbance or riot occurs and the incident commander believes it's necessary to use crowd control munitions and it's authorized under state law and Bureau directive, we'll be prepared to do that as well. And lastly, rapid response team members will be equipped with body-worn cameras starting later this summer, as with the rest of the Bureau, so we'll have those out there as well. And with that, I'll hand it back to Sergeant Allen.
Andy, you guys come forward. So we asked some of the members of the rapid response team to come here today, and several of them agreed, and we very much appreciate having them here. So we're going to have a few words from Sergeant Andrew Kofoed, A-N-D-R-E-W, K-O-F-O-E-D. Sergeant Kofoed will be joined by some other members of the team. So can You guys come over here.
Good morning. I'm Andrew Kofoed. I am a sergeant in the Portland Police Bureau Special Resources Division, currently assigned to the Rapid Response Team. I've been a Portland Police member for 22 plus years and a member of the Rapid Response Team since around 2017. These members behind me represent just a fraction of the membership that were selected to be a part of the Rapid Response Team. And I'm very proud of these individuals for being here today because they do represent the best of the best that we have. And that selection process that Commander Schoening talked about was very thorough. These members were recommended by their supervisors, by their commander in their current assignments. And again, they represent very, very good members that are proficient in de-escalation, communication, and problem solving. So we're really happy to have them a part of our team. One of the things that I think when I was talking to Kevin about just things to talk about is the question came up about why rejoin this team and why rejoin this team now and why are we rejoining it and reconstituting it. And I think for me personally, it's just the answer is pretty simple. As we believe in the mission and the purpose and goals of this team. We highly believe in in supporting those lawful activities at these events and really believe in the importance and purpose of maintaining public safety, peace and order at these events. I think that's our overall motivation and goal to returning to this team is we really believe in that. And Portland's a beautiful city and we want to see it thrive. And I believe that the city and the community members and the businesses, they all really want a public order team that has special capabilities to respond to events that need a higher level of special tools and tactics to really respond to some of those emergencies and do some of those interventions when they are needed. Our hope is that we're not needed and these events can peacefully regulate themselves. That is one thing we hope for. But if it's needed for some kind of intervention, we want to be prepared to respond and make sure that these events are safe for all, including the participants, the non-participants, community members, business owners, and also visitors to this city that are coming and trying to enjoy the city. One of the things that is really, I just wanted to thank the mayor and the chief and all the command staff and the work that they put into this, but really their commitment and support to those 96 hours of training a year for this team. I mean, that is huge, and that's a big commitment, especially where we're at in the police bureau now. And so I really want to recognize them for their support in making that decision. Those recommendations come from, like as was mentioned, the National Tactical Officers Association, the NTOA, 4 public order teams, and they and that commitment really represents what this team can become. It helps us to be more professional, be more effective, and be able to respond in a way that we think that the public wants us to respond, and that we can be effective in maintaining those events and making sure that they maintain their safety for all. So that's really all I have. But can't say enough about these people and their dedication and their willingness to do this work. It takes a special type of person to do it, and we're really proud of these people that stepped up to accept that responsibility. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. All right, and finally, I'd like to invite Chief Bob Day up to the podium to say a few words as well.
It should be no wonder why I love this job so much and so grateful to serve with these fantastic folks that you've heard of, just heard from. And a lot of what they've covered, I don't need to go over. A couple of things. I do want to mention and thank the mayor once again for his support. We've been speaking about this since the day that I came on board in October, and just grateful for his leadership and encouragement around that, and other members of council, and of course the mayor's team has been critical. I really want to thank members of the police bureau, as you heard from our commanders that have leaned in, to Lieutenant Steinberg, Sergeant Kofoed, Officer Young, others that have taken on this responsibility. We made it a priority early on in my administration to make sure that we did our best to get staff assigned full-time. And I want to thank the men and women of the police bureau that have volunteered to step into this role at this time. It is a volunteer assignment. As you can see, we had a high level of interest, which I think speaks to the credibility and the integrity and the passion that our members have around service. And I also want to thank those members that have served in the rapid response team really for the last many, many years, and including those that were on the front lines night after night back in 20 and 21, and thank them for their service and their commitment to the City of Portland and the Portland Police Bureau. There's probably no greater question or topic that I get asked about on a daily or weekly basis than what is going to happen in the fall of 2024 in the City of Portland. And that's not only true here, that's true nationally. Wherever I go and wherever I speak or spend time, whether it's in Portland, whether it's in the suburbs, or whether it's out of state, people want to know how Portland's going to show up. And they want to know how the Portland Police Bureau specifically is going to respond. And I tell them we're going to respond the same way that we respond to any other types of events or issues we have within the City of Portland. And that is in alignment with the 3 goals that I've outlined for us since I started at the end of last year. Number 1 goal is that we will continue to be diligent in transforming the dynamic between the police and the people we serve. Number 2 is we will be working to reduce crime and the fear of crime. And number 3 is we will be focused on organizational growth and development. And all 3 of those goals tie specifically into this work. The rapid response team certainly is recognized and known for its intervention and response to crowd control situations, disturbances, riots, protests, however we want to label it. But I really do see this team as a holistic resource for the Portland Police Bureau. And we can use them, as mentioned, in a variety of different ways besides just public order events. But transforming that dynamic between the police and the people we serve requires intentional effort on our part. And part of that is demonstrated by this layered approach that we're taking to crowd response. Our DLOs, I saw them in action on Saturday at the Grand Floral Parade when we had a group show up on the parade line. Saw them over there engaging, talking, reaching out. Same thing, next step up when they began to encroach on the parade line using the bicycle officers with their easily visible yellow uniforms. Once again, we're already applying these principles and these practices and seeing success come out of that, I believe, through, and maybe we need to make arrests and sometimes just being able to message. So that fits right into our effort around transforming the dynamic between the police and the people we serve and doing that outreach, and we're committed to doing that. We've been meeting regularly with a number of groups in this time period in anticipation of maybe not only the ongoing challenges we're facing, but what we may face in the fall. ACLU, Oregon Justice Resource Commission, others. I've been meeting with university presidents. We're making ourselves available to those that want to talk. We're engaged with the community advisory groups. We have several community advisory groups that advise the Portland Police Bureau, Muslim Advisory Council, our Slavic Advisory Council, African American Advisory Council. We have PSEP, we have the Training Advisory Council. We're engaging all of them in a very transparent manner to know that where we're going, what we have done, what we have learned from our experience, and how we're moving forward, transforming that dynamic between the police and the people we serve. Secondly, we are about reducing crime and the fear of crime. And I've been very clear about distinguishing between the importance of supporting and advocating our First Amendment rights and not being accepting of criminal behavior. And that's not going to change in this process. We've been consistent with that over the last several months. We want people to be able to express their opinions. I know that people are frustrated. I know that there's a lot of reasons to be upset about various events, whether they be in our city or in our world. And the beauty of this country and the beauty of living in democracy is the freedom to be able to do that. But when that behavior becomes criminal, our officers will have full discretion, our incident commanders full discretion as to when and how to intervene to interrupt that, which is in line with one of my goals around reducing crime and the fear of crime. And that factors into the fear of crime because that chaos does lead to fear. That sense of out-of-control behavior that we witnessed over the years does lead to a sense of fear, and it is damaging to our community, both for people, just the trauma they experience, as well as the overall perception of the city of Portland and how we want to be seen and how we want to be known. And finally, this team represents our commitment to organizational growth and development. I'm unapologetically proud and committed to making sure that our members are the most well-trained, well-prepared, emotionally, physically, spiritually, financially, to be able to show up and do this job. We ask them every day to step into a gap that frankly nobody else wants to step into. We ask them every day to handle extremely complex, challenging situations that don't really have easy answers. And so we need to make sure that they're in a place where they understand that we have their back. that we have their best interest in mind. Because that may sound a little bit like I've been criticized at times saying, well, you're supposed to be focused on the community. By doing this, we are focusing on the community. The Portland Police Bureau contacts hundreds of thousands of people a year in this city. And if the members of the Portland Police Bureau aren't healthy, well-trained, well-equipped, well-prepared, then that hinders the successful outcomes that we're trying to achieve. So, number one, we are going to be focused on that dynamic and that relationship with police and community building, trust building. We are going to be addressing criminal behavior at the discretion of the incident commanders and the officers on scene. And we are going to continue to train and prepare our members to the best of our ability so they're well equipped. Finally, I would say that, I've used this analogy before, or this metaphor or picture, word picture, the windshield's bigger than the rearview mirror for a reason. And we don't have to ignore the events of 2020 and 2021. I think the Police Bureau has demonstrated through this process that you heard today, we are a learning organization. We seek outside input, outside counsel, leadership, et cetera. We have made changes, but the reality is we're going forward. We're moving forward. And in the hundreds and hundreds of conversations I've had over the last 6 to 9 months in this role with our community, specific to the election, specific to public order, is people want to move forward. They want to know how we're going to show up. And what I told them, like I did this morning when I was at Park Rose at 7 a.m. with the Rotary out there, is it's going to take all of us. This is not a Portland Police Bureau issue. This is a community issue. And we are part of the community. We are part of the conversation. But this means all of us, how we're going to show up as individuals, as organizations, whether we represent the media, whether we represent education, whether we represent business, whether we represent social services, whatever it might be. The outcome for this fall is really a community effort. And it should not be looked upon to be just upon the shoulders of the Portland Police Bureau, and certainly not just placed upon the shoulders of the response from the Rapid Response Team. So appreciate everybody's attention and willingness to be here today, and look forward to some questions.
All right, so we're doing good on time, so we have about 10 minutes or so. Can I ask all of the speakers to maybe just come stage up here? I respectfully ask that you identify yourself when you're asking a question in your news outlet, so we know who's asking. And then let us know if you're directing the question to a specific speaker, and if not, that's fine. We'll find the appropriate person. Questions? Blair.
I'm Blair from KTW. I think I just have a quick clarifying question. So it's sort of like a layered approach when you respond, like the guys in the white t-shirt will go in first, and then maybe the bike squad, and then another layer, or does it just depend? How does that all work? And are they all on the same team, all those different uniforms?
Commander Dobson.
So they're different. We're all on the same team.
Yes.
But yes, we're different. Actually, we're actually different units. And it depends. It's all situational on what we're seeing out there. Typically, what we're looking for is normalcy. So we go off of the disorder theory and principle of model. And it goes with, we're trying to keep normalcy. And so to start with, we're going to put our white shirts out there, communicating with leaders and others who want to communicate with us, again, to keep folks self-monitoring themselves and maintaining that peacefulness. As we see tension pieces, that's when we introduce bicycles. And again, their focus again is focused on communication with the group to try to get them to self-monitor and take care of the problem on their own. If that doesn't work, though, we are willing to go in and then extract that person or that tension point or that friction point if we need to through arrest, or just by removing that person. Say somebody, a bystander shows up that doesn't like the message of the group and starts to cause a friction point, then we'll work through that piece. Again, if that doesn't fix it, then we have to, again, bring in more resources to address those problems. Does that answer your question? Not all of them are on the rapid response team, no. So your folks, they're coming from all different locations. This is a secondary job for all of these folks. They're not all on, some of them may be, but not all of them will be on that team. Okay?
And I meant to say this before, and I apologize. I want to recognize the Community Safety Division for being here. We have a representative from Multnomah County District Attorney's Office and the City Attorney's Office, so thank you all for being here to be a part of that. Also, we have displayed some of the uniforms and equipment that the team will use, including the body cams. We haven't we've been talking a lot about body cams, but these are going to start to be rolled out in the next couple weeks. So we're going to start seeing these on the street, and that will certainly be something new for rapid response teams. So if you have any questions about those items, you're also free to come up and take a look at the equipment and get close-up shots. More questions? Heather?
Heather Roberts, the Oregon Radio News Network. Are all of the RRT members based at a central precinct?
The answer is no. They're based out of all the precincts, other divisions. So we've got some who are coming from the Specialized Resources Division, some from patrol precincts, including Central, East, North, I believe some from the Detective Division. So all of the organization. Again, these are all secondary functions for people who have day jobs doing other work in parts of the Bureau.
So they are able to deploy. I mean, I know 2020 the focus is downtown, but we've seen in the last few years some of these crowds, East Side, North Portland. So they're able to deploy everywhere. How quickly?
Yeah, fairly quickly. It'll depend, how many of them are working on patrol. So if the event happens during the daytime hours and they're working at a precinct already or in their day job, it's a pretty quick response with a limited number. But we've got folks coming from day shift, afternoon shift, night shift. So if we're requiring specialized responses in the after hours, maybe take longer to get the full team put back together or on the weekend. But if it's a planned event, we'll be able to bring them in ahead of time and have the full team available.
You're welcome, Julie.
Yes. So according to PBB, of the 50 new rapid response team members, 35 are returning from that former team that disbanded in 2021. Now that was a massive resignation that we and other national media covered following the indictment of Officer Corey Budworth. My question that I posed to you today during the
Franz
concept meeting.
is already at the podium.
I know, right? But I lost time to you.
I know, but you keep looking at me. So it's coming this way.
My question for you at the PSEP meeting was, with this raise and this new contract, if there was any clauses to prevent them from walking off and disbanding again with this new team. You said no. How does Portland Police plan to ensure something similar doesn't happen with a team that is comprised of mostly returning members?
Yeah, well, we can't. I mean, the reality is that this is a volunteer assignment. So, being able to say that I can issue some sort of decree that requires them to continue to stay committed to it. But my belief and my hope is that this time around, as an organization, we will do a better job supporting them in the challenge that we're asking them to take on, as well as a community. Right? There is a larger conversation that we're not going to be able to have today about our community response to 2020 and 21, not just the rapid response team. But my hope that the members that have taken on this task, that they will recognize our investment in their training, in their safety, in our advocacy for them, in our understanding of incident command management better so that they're not working the amount of hours and the time they were, et cetera, just trying to mitigate some of the trauma and harm that they experienced in that role. And we put them in that role because we didn't really have any other option. And we're trying to be more thoughtful. So at the end of the day, there may be some that get into this and they're like, you know what, this isn't for me. And that's true for any assignment in the organization, even full-time employment. We've had people decide I just don't want to be a police officer anymore. So I really am confident, though, because of the vetting process, because of the amount of interest, these members know that they were selected really at a high level, as we've said, sort of the best of the best. And I think that commitment shows by their willingness to step up. So I'm hopeful and confident that we will see a sustained response for years to come with this team, with these members, and then the addition of new members over time.
Troy.
Troy with OPB. Chief Day, we've talked a lot about new equipment, new systems for the teams. I think the public would be curious to know if there are also any new implementations for policies or training for holding these members accountable, if there's any internal reviews, anything changing on that front.
Well, I do know that there were several legislative changes that govern our response to these events. So, we're bound by state law just like everybody else is. So we're going to certainly follow that. I know that we have made sure that our standard operating procedures and our directives, which are the guiding principles for accountability and for performance in the organization, have been changed to align with state law. So I'm confident that we have the processes put in place to make sure that our members have clear lines of direction, they have a clear area to work in. We're making sure that our incident command team also have that so that there isn't a disconnect where maybe an incident commander is asking the team to do something or vice versa. So I think we're far better aligned, far better prepared to stay within the boundaries that have been set by the Bureau, by the city, the expectation of the community, and by the state. And then in addition to that, I think that we have a robust oversight system already that exists in the independent police review, as well as our internal affairs process, which we will continue to rely upon. And we now have had this outside organization come in, so we're going to have some standards and expectations to bounce off of to use, as well as the National Tactical Officers Association, NTOA. So I'm confident that we have built in the appropriate levels of accountability, but we never rest on our laurels. We never stop. We evaluate every time, each event, to make sure that we're meeting the standard and the expectation of the organization and of the community.
Just a quick follow-up question. With this new training, you guys mentioned the hours of training that are now being required by the Independent Monitor LLC. Will that training be made available to the public?
Yeah, you mean like the training material or visualize the training or whatever? Yeah, we're having that conversation right now with the city attorney about release of information. It's my desire to put out information the most that we can as quickly as we can. I also want to make sure that I don't create, sometimes in my position I can be like, yeah, send it out, and then it creates more chaos or more risk for the members as well as more risk for the community. So we are having those conversations. It is my desire to share as much information as possible when possible, so we'll continue to work with the city attorney's office on that.
Okay, probably one more question?
Yeah, I just have a follow-up. I'm kind of passing along a question from Connor McCarthy at KPTV. He's asking, at PSU, we saw officers engage and then give warnings through the media, then through loudspeakers. Then they moved in on the library. Is this a type of layered response that the new rapid response team would be doing? Would that be their job?
So yeah, one of the pieces to that, as I talked about those pillars, communication is one of those important pieces. And as you saw in the PSU library, we used a layered approach even in the communications, where it was not only at the line level where officers were on the line giving direction, we had a sound truck giving direction, and then we also had the PIO as well pushing out social media direction as well to keep people informed. And so that is part of that layered communication piece in this model that we're trying to use. Absolutely.
Okay, we'll wrap it up with that. Thanks very much. And we will be available for any additional follow-up questions via email if they come up. Thank you again.